When your program is really good and your fan base isn't used to losing, sometimes part of it panics. I'm here to tell you today there's no reason to panic about Texas Tech men's basketball and why they're actually better than their record shows. And take a look at the latest metrics and bracketology for your Red Raiders as March is fast approaching. Hey, how's it going, everybody? It's RC Maxfield here for the Back to 12 podcast. And honestly, I kind of just want to hop right into this one in terms of looking at KenPom and where the Red Raiders stand after their loss against TCU. But before we do, be sure to like the video, hit that subscribe button, and turn on that notification bell to join the largest group of Texas Tech fans on YouTube for 100% free daily videos on your Red Raiders. Hey, it's as simple as liking the video, hitting that subscribe button. There's no better deal in the tech space. All right, let's get into it. As you can see, Red Raiders are still top 10 in KenPom. And the reason I bring this up in terms of real quick tangent while we have the KenPom stats on your screen, you can check those out. A lot of people in my mentions on the Bird app, aka Twitter, and also the comments on the recap live video we did here on the channel were really pessimistic. And I get it. I was frustrated by the loss too because of how uncharacteristic it was for the Red Raiders. But you have to think about it this way. Turnovers in that game for Texas Tech were mostly their own doing. I can think of about 5 where it was just like, what are we doing here? Right? Like, it wasn't because of TCU. It was because of Texas Tech just having a bad rep or a quote unquote brain fart, whatever the hell you want to call it. Right. But also the thing that stood out to me after rewatching yesterday was teams are going to double JT Toppin. I'm not telling you anything that you don't know at this point, right? And real quick, let me get back on the screen here. But JT does a phenomenal job of reading the defense, looking over those 2 defenders, and finding the open man. He did so against TCU as well, okay? The issue was, and it's bound to happen, these guys are human, right? KO and Kerwin Walton had 4 opportunities at pretty much wide open threes in the first half. They made 0 of them. Odds are they're not going to make 0 of 4 wide open threes moving forward if they have the opportunity, right? Let's just say they make 2. I think that that's more than fair. It's a brand new ball game. I mean, math-wise, you'd win by 3, but we know that maybe the game goes a little bit differently, right? Also, Tech just had a terrible night on the boards. We'll look at it here in a little bit in terms of the stats side of things. Tech just had a very uncharacteristic night rebounding, specifically on the offensive rebounding side of things, where you look at it and they have the 5th best margin in terms of rebounding differential from what they get in terms of what they allow. And then they had 4 less offensive rebounds than they average. Credit to TCU on that front. But it was one of those deals where I thought just Texas Tech didn't make any quality adjustments in a lot of things. And it starts at the coaching aspect of it, but also the player side of things too. Like, it felt like, and it feels like a cop-out almost in a way, the subbing caught up to him in terms of Grant McCasland, and these guys ran out of steam, specifically late in the game. I heard somebody, and I wish I could call him out, in terms of them saying that Texas Tech finished the game strong. No, they didn't. No, they did not. Texas Tech did not finish that game very strong. You could tell that they ran out of gas in that game. But let's get down to the metrics in this one because, again, now is not the time to panic. This team is still really, really freaking good, people. And my expectation for them has not changed. I still think this is a second caliber weekend team, and what I have said since the moment that they landed JT Toppin, that they have been a second caliber weekend team, is that if you have a bounce go your way in the Sweet 16, you're in the Elite 8. And if you have a bounce or 2 go your way in the Elite 8, you're playing in San Antonio. That's just the nature of the NCAA tournament, right? But Texas Tech is good enough to be there, albeit there's some really good teams. But again, let's get back to, KenPom. As you saw earlier, Texas Tech was 8th. Not surprising. They're right on that fringe line of being qualified as an NCAA tournament national championship contender. Just a couple spots out of it in the defensive rating. Got to be in the top 31 to meet the qualifications for that in terms of historical data from KenPom. Now, we move on over to, the net. And this is something that a lot of people want to discuss, and rightfully so. You can see Texas Tech is still 7th. It's funny because they actually lost a quad 1 win and got a quad 1 loss, which I guess stabilized them in a way. I know it's kind of weird, but it did happen. You're going to see that quad 1 victory number kind of fluctuate for Texas Tech for the sheer fact of you have Kansas State, Utah, and then TCU all in this weird spot where it's the top 75. Technically, right now, Kansas State, that win for the Red Raiders is no longer a quad 1 win because they are 76th, i.e., right on the fringe of it being a quad 1, really one spot, right? So you have that aspect of things as well. But overall, Texas Tech is in a phenomenal spot in terms of the net. Now, we'll look at one bracketology site here in just a minute. It'll be on 3. But Texas Tech is still firmly in the mix to be a 4 seed. I don't know if the 2 is still on the table anymore. In fact, I don't think it is, even if you beat Houston and Kansas. I don't think it is, just because Kansas, by the time you're playing them, you'll be in the top 25 if you're Texas Tech, but Kansas will no longer be in the top 25 after their just absolute shellacking that they received out in Provo at the hands of the BYU Cougars. But Texas Tech is still firmly in a really good spot to be a 4 seed and then maybe even a potential 3 seed if they beat Houston and Kansas. Now, we head on over to Bart Torvik. This is a really good site as well. I recommend y'all check it out. Scrolling up just a little bit so y'all can see all of the top teams. The Red Raiders are still in the top 10 as well here on Bart Torvik, and ranked as a top 10 offense, top 32 defense. There's a lot of positives here for the Red Raiders moving forward on this front. Now, I do want to get a little bit more granular when it comes to just specific losses. Obviously, Texas Tech has 6 losses on the year. I thought this was just an absolutely phenomenal tweet by Jason Fortin, as you can see on your screen right here. And shout out to Ryan Mainville over at the Gauchos for retweeting it to get it on my timeline. Texas Tech has, in terms of margin of defeat, the 5th lowest margin of defeat in the country. Okay? You think about it. Iowa State, 1 point. Texas A&M, 5 points without JT Toppin. St. Joe's, at the buzzer you lose off of a Darion Williams missed floater. Arizona, that's your largest margin of victory or defeat this year out in Tucson. That's not too bad. And then obviously the last game against TCU where you lost by 3 with UCF in there as well. I mean, again, Texas Tech is a really good team when it's all said and done, right? You look at this and they don't lose. They're always in close games in terms of when the games they do lose. I shouldn't say they don't lose because obviously you see the losses on your screen. But when they do lose, they're in it till the very end, period. End of story. That's how it works for them. And now that means they also play in a lot of close games. It doesn't mean that they're bad. It just means that they're accustomed to that, which I think will pay off huge for the Red Raiders in March. But again, the 5th lowest margin of defeat in the country. We're talking about a couple of 1 seeds here, and obviously that Alabama number has changed because they don't have the loss at Missouri there, okay? So you look at that if you're Texas Tech, and you have to feel good about this team and how resilient they are. But also, let's go look at some of their stats, right? This is overarching stuff, probably 50,000-foot view type stuff if we're being honest about it, but I still think it's important. You have a top 5 defense in the Big 12, 67 points allowed per game. That's really good, considering you're averaging basically 82, the top number in the Big 12 conference this year. You go down in terms of margin, you're averaging 14.7 points more than your opponents each game, right? Houston, obviously just ferocious defensively, has the largest margin. But again, we talk about the rebounding discrepancy in that TCU game. You're actually one of the better rebounding teams in the Big 12, 5th. You average 5 more rebounds per game than your opponent. You just had a bad night against TCU, and I know that sucks to say, and we'll preview the West Virginia game here later on in the week here on the channel, so just another reason for you to subscribe. But I also wanted to look at one bracketology metric that has been updated. This from On3. We'll have more on Monday when it comes to ESPN, CBS after the West Virginia game. But the Red Raiders, according to On3, are a 4 seed in the South that would go through Atlanta in the Auburn region. Don't love that. But they would face off against Michigan State, or McNeese if they were to beat High Point, which is interesting from the standpoint of High Point in the Big South is where Tubby Smith, one of the former coaches for the Red Raiders, was a star on the basketball floor down there and actually coached them for a little bit as well. After he left Texas Tech for Memphis, he went to High Point. So there you go in that regard. There's always a way to intertwine the Red Raiders somewhere because, as we all know, it is all West Texas. I make this video, though, as I get back on your screen here. Like, again, I'm not trying to tell you how to feel as a fan. I'm just trying to bring data to you in the sense of they had an off night. Was it frustrating? Hell yeah. I'm right there with you. At the end of the day, though, this Texas Tech team is really good, and your expectations for them really shouldn't change at all. They're still a Sweet 16 caliber team, and they have every possibility, if a bounce here or a bounce there goes their way, to play in San Antonio. Now, are there a lot of teams that fit this mold? Yeah, there's a lot of parity in college basketball this year, and it's fun to watch. But Texas Tech is firmly in the mix as one of those great teams, and I don't use that term loosely, great teams in college basketball, okay? They'll have every opportunity to prove it moving forward as the schedule gets a little bit tougher, as now you're facing a team firmly in the mix on the bubble in West Virginia. We'll preview that, as I mentioned, here on the channel later this week, probably tomorrow since it's Friday and the game's on Saturday. But you also play Houston right after that, and then you head up to Lawrence, Kansas to play a team in Kansas that seems like they're spiraling right now while you finish your season at home on Senior Day against Colorado, and then one more game on the road at Arizona State. So only 5 regular season games left. It feels like Texas Tech could go 4-1 in that stretch, right? 3-2 worst case scenario, okay? But if that happens, you're still in a really good spot. If you're Texas Tech, does the TCU loss sting? Absolutely. But I said this in the post-game live as well. TCU played their arguably best game of their Big 12 schedule so far this year in terms of they played their A game against you. You played a C- type game, right? And you still almost won. I think that tells you all you need to know about this team. Still doesn't take away from the fact that it's frustrating. I get that. But this team is still really, really good, people. Thank you for tuning in. Appreciate all y'all's support. Over 11,000 of y'all strong, 11,600 of y'all strong. If you want to be a part of the largest group of Texas Tech fans here on YouTube, it's really simple. All you got to do is like the video, hit that subscribe button, and turn on that notification bell to join the Back to 12 squad today. And as always, stay safe and Reckham Tech.